If you acted on that sudden surge of sexual desire that arises after our spouse or partner died, there's a chance that guilt and shame now feel heavier than grief itself. In episode 10, we talked about widow's fire shame and how to release it. Now we'll unpack widow's fire guilt. Guilt is perhaps the most painful companion to death. Quote from Coco Chanel. Hi, I'm Patience Migraine, and this is Patience in the Morning. In this episode, we'll talk about why your body did what it did, why the guilt is so big, especially if you're raising kids alone. And, you know, we'll cover one kind step to letting go of guilt. Recognize and name it. Widow's Fire is the name widows and researchers are now using for that intense craving for sex, intimacy, and just the physical closeness that can hit weeks or months after losing a spouse. It can feel really shocking and even offensive to our broken hearts. The part that doesn't get spoken about enough is about sex and intimate touch. They're not just for pleasure, they're biology. Orgasm and physical intimacy release dopamine and oxytocin, along with other neurochemicals that are healthy for us. These neurochemicals help soothe, bond, and help our nervous systems feel safe, even if momentarily. So when our person dies, we lose not just their presence, we lose the everyday ways our body, brain, and heart were co-regulating with them, snuggling on the couch, the way they held us, our sexual rhythms. The widow's fire is our body saying, hey, I'm drowning, and I remember how it feels to be okay, and I want that again. So widow's fire doesn't mean we're over the grief or we're over our late spouse. It means that we're human. And what comes along with that widow's fire is guilt sometimes. Sometimes it's just that we thought about it. Sometimes we actually did something. And guilt is that feeling like I did something wrong. So let's talk about why the guilt and shame feel so brutal. And it doesn't matter how old you are. You could be a senior widow and you could be a very young widow. And if you're raising kids, it can feel even more brutal and just challenging because we don't have the freedom to just explore and date. But the reality is, even for those who do, it can feel pretty awful. So most of us were told a good widow stays sad. A good mom, she doesn't have needs. This is even true before we become widows. A faithful spouse never even looks at anyone else. And this is a bit of nonsense. So, because those expectations probably were not created by a widow. So, the younger you are, the more nonsense it probably is, because we're designed to thrive in companionship and in the space with others. So when desire shows up, it doesn't just feel awkward. It feels like, well, we broke a secret rule of some sort that we ourselves didn't even make, right? So add parenting to the mix, and we're the only adults in the house. We're doing school runs, paying the bills, doing the emotional labor, and just trying to keep our kids' world from collapsing. And then, one night out of weakness and vulnerability, we give in to the widow's fire. And then the next day we wake up, the kids need breakfast, we have our daily routines, and there it is. Guilt is very loud, sitting with us at the breakfast table. So research on widowed parents shows that many widowed parents are carrying intense grief and even depressive symptoms. They're parenting alone, and that can be really hard because you're grieving and you're parenting, and then you're also learning how to parent grieving children. So now, if we give in, even in our mind and thoughts to widow's fire, we can have this huge guilt. And we're not just thinking like, oh my gosh, I feel so guilty about thinking about someone else or having thoughts of pleasure or even solo pleasing myself. We can be thinking really terrible because we actually give into it. Maybe we went on a date. Maybe we had sex with someone. We're thinking, I'm a bad person. I'm a bad mother. That's shame. But we're also feeling the guilt is, oh my gosh, I did something wrong. I did something terribly wrong. And I did something that's betraying my family, my late spouse, my late partner. And I'm doing something that's hurting my family. This isn't always true. And guilt is literally telling you you did something wrong. But you need to check in and say, what is it that really happen? And did I really do something wrong? And have I really hurt someone? And, we'll have to figure out if that answer is yes, then we probably need to correct some things. If it's no, okay. So, what are the experts and other widows saying? So, here's what I want you to know. From the wider grief world, therapists, coaches, and widowed authors are naming widowsfire as a natural part of grief. It's not a moral failure. You haven't done anything wrong by feeling widowsfire or giving into widowsfire. Many widows and widowers talk very openly about the regret that they feel after they give into widowsfire. So, especially to the casual encounters that don't align with their beliefs and values. And that's understandable because that's what guilt is. Guilt is when we've done something that doesn't align with our values and our beliefs. We feel guilty because, in a way, we have done something wrong. So, we want to stay true to ourselves by not reacting and giving in to widow's fire if that's not what we believe is the right thing to do. Right? We're all different. So, some of us feel that that's okay. Some of us do not feel that that's okay. It's not something that we want. Right? Guilt is also going against who we want to be. So if we've done something that isn't aligning up with who we want to be, we're going to feel guilty. So it's important that you spend some time thinking about who do you want to be tomorrow? And if your choices are going to leave you feeling more aligned with who you are and your values and your beliefs, or is it going to kind of misalign you here? And regret is real. It doesn't mean we're broken or dirty or did something wrong. Remember, it's different for all of us. But what it means is that we care about how our choices affect our hearts, our lives, our kids, and our memories of our late spouse. You're not alone in this. You're part of a very real, quiet conversation about grief and about one of the responses that our body has, which is widow's fire. I invite you to shift from what's wrong with me to what's my next compassionate step. So let's normalize some things like our body. So when we are grieving and our nervous system reaches for orgasm or intimate touch, which it can and will, it is trying to regulate from trauma. So we can say to ourselves, my body is trying to help me survive. That's a gift. It's physiology. Next, reframe your guilt. Guilt is often a love language in disguise. It tells us, what our values are. We value our kids, our partner, our integrity, our bodies. Instead of using guilt as punishment, use it as a mirror. Ask yourself, what kind of sexual and romantic choices do I really want right now? Choices that really honor my values and my womanhood and my grief, right? And then give the fire, the desire, a safer place to go. So let some of that intensity move through your body through things like running, weightlifting, dancing, just yoga, and maybe even crying. Yoga will help you release a lot of pent up stress and a hidden tension in the body. And it's okay to go to yoga class and cry the whole time. It's okay. As a yoga teacher in my grief, I often found myself crying, yes, on the yoga mat, in the car from the yoga class, and as a teacher in the yoga class. When I would get to Shavasana, I'd turn down the lights, get all of my students in their resting pose, guide them through meditation, and then I'd silently sob in the dark in a room full of resting, peaceful people. Was in a huge release, and I really had no control over it. It just kicked in. Physical movement, it helps discharge some of the nervous system energy, without adding more emotional complications. When we invite a new person in, or we're just going out and doing casual interactions with someone that is really not of value to us, it can create a lot of emotional complications. And then sometimes even we can get really confused with this sexual attraction and this physical draw and attention. We can confuse that with genuine love and genuine satisfaction with the person. A few episodes back, I talked about in Widow's Fire, we can even feel attracted to some of the most unattractive people. There is such a huge hurt within our bodies that we will be reaching for anybody, somebody to help us feel better and regulate. So, my lovely, beautiful widow, please protect your heart, protect your mind, your body here. So, grief needs movement. So, if we move in safe ways, we don't get stuck. So it's kind of like, think about your joints. Like, if we don't move our joints, right, they get sticky and stiff. That's kind of what grief is inside our bodies. It'll get sticky and stiff and stuck and be there longer than we need to, and in ways that we don't actually want our grief to be. Okay, if it feels aligned, you could explore solo pleasure. Yes. We find that solo pleasure now doesn't replace partner pleasure, but it can definitely increase and release the oxytocin and dopamine that is generated with an orgasm and touch. It can also help us sleep better. And all of this can be done without inviting a stranger or someone we really aren't ready to be with into our kids' worlds or our grief story or just our homes. Seek intimacy that isn't only sexual or romantic. And yes, grief groups, therapy, spiritual community, grief coaches, deep friendships, they do not soothe the widow's fire like a romantic interest or sexual connection might, but they can give us emotional closeness and opportunities to be seen and heard and acknowledged, which eliminate the shame and guilt. If we share our true feelings and what is really going on with us with a trustworthy person, that support really does soften the urge to chase the relief of the widow's fire, of the pain through sex alone, and even from preventing us from reaching out for a new relationship. So there is safety and love in our support groups. And then finally, as a single parent, we want to put boundaries around our dating and our sexual life. And I know that I've said this, but it can be hard. So who we see, when, whether they meet our kids, what feels safe, and really honoring our home and our bodies. We're allowed to be a parent and a person with needs. So don't get me wrong. It doesn't mean that you can't date. It doesn't mean you can't be curious. It doesn't mean that you can't, but finding a balance and remembering your priorities, right? Both dating or whatever it is you choose to do, maybe it's sexual, casual encounters, they can exist with the right support and the right choices. And remember, naming what's happening or what is fire, understanding that, naming if it's shame or if it's guilt that's surfacing, and then asking ourselves, is any of what the stories that we're telling ourselves, are they true? Right? Get factual. And then also ask yourself, what do I really want? What do I really want for myself? What do I really want for my future? You are allowed to make choices for yourself. And your healing, it's not about never feeling desire again, because it's going to be there. And, we're all worthy of being loved again. What we're looking for is relating to desire with wisdom, okay? Tenderness, and then just really real honesty. So it's about responding to desire when we are genuinely ready on an emotional, mental, and physical preparedness. Like, we really are ready for this. When we aren't really ready in all of the avenues here, guilt isn't going to be loud. It probably isn't even going to surface, because guilt after loss, well, it shows up because we're afraid of change. We're afraid of letting go. We're afraid of moving toward the new identity that we didn't plan for, that we're probably really not ready to accept. So that guilt and even shame, they creep in as a way to protect us. If you've given into widow's fire and now you're drowning in guilt, please know you are not alone. You're not broken. You're not a bad parent or a bad partner to your late spouse. You're living, you're breathing, you're in a body that's trying to heal and regulate from the trauma and the grief. If this episode resonated with you, I'm interested in finding out, like, does any of this relate? And if so, you could just put something really simple in the comments as, yes, this is me. If you know a widow and that could use this, simply share this with another widow or a solo grieving parent who might need to hear that, their desire is not their enemy. Their body is it's really, their body does love them and is trying to help them. So, and thanks for joining and listening with me today. If you want to more conversations about grief and your bodies, the widow's fire, please subscribe to Patience in the Morning. Remember, you are worthy of being safe, secure, and trusted and cherished.